Hey guys, it's Randy from Voices, and welcome to part 1 of our new series, Creative 101. In this series, we're going to cover everything for the creative, from microphones to studio setups, studio recording tips, voiceover recording, audio editing, you name it. And the best part is that this is going to be community driven, so feel free to throw a comment down below with a suggestion or topic that you'd like to see covered in this series. And we're actually going to pick one person who uses the hashtag Creative101 for your chance to win one 3-month membership here at Voices. Now, your whole journey as a voiceover actor starts at the microphone. So that's where we thought we'd start this series. We get asked all the time, condenser microphones or dynamic microphones. So what makes dynamic microphones good at some things and condenser microphones good at other things? Well, to really know the sound comparison and to know what you're listening for, you have to know how these microphones work. So let's start off with dynamic microphones. Dynamic microphones are used on everything from singers to drum sets to guitar amps to two-way radios and even karaoke night. In fact, just about every concert that you've ever been to, the singer's been using a dynamic microphone. Remember concerts? Dynamic mics are actually incredibly simple. There's a diaphragm, which is a piece of BOPET, or biaxially oriented polyethylene terephthalate. This thin membrane is essentially working like the eardrum for the microphone. And so attached to this membrane is a very tightly wound copper coil, and that coil goes around a charged magnet. So as the sound comes in, it hits the diaphragm and moves the diaphragm and the copper coil simultaneously, hence the term moving coil microphone. And that moves over the charged magnet, which creates a fluctuation in the voltage, resulting in an audio signal. Now, the signal coming out of a dynamic microphone is actually pretty weak. And that's one of the downsides of a dynamic mic, is that they tend to need a lot of gain in order to boost that signal, that microphone signal, up to a line level, which is what your computer would like to read. As you boost that microphone signal, you also boost any noise that might have gotten in your microphone cables. But that's essentially it. It's really just the 3 components. There's the diaphragm, the voice coil, and the magnet. And that's what makes them so reliable and simple to use. They don't have any electronic parts inside them that require power. They're just a very, very simple microphone. Now, any of you audiophiles out there, you might actually recognize this diagram from a speaker. And that's because dynamic microphones and speakers are actually the exact same technology. So to answer your next question, yes, you can record sound into a speaker if you wire it properly. And on the same note, you can actually use a dynamic microphone as a speaker. It's just going to be very, very, very quiet. Condenser microphones are also used everywhere, from studio recording to drum sets, acoustic guitars, podiums, even in the cell phones, there's condenser microphones. So they're just as common as dynamic microphones these days. So condensers have a diaphragm and they have a backplate. And now the backplate is actually charged by the 48 volts from your console. We call this phantom power. As the sound comes in, it moves the diaphragm, causing a change in the distance between the 2 plates, resulting in a voltage or audio signal. And on most condensers, there's also a FET transformer in there, and some other componentry that require power from your 48 volt phantom power. So condenser microphones have a lot more componentry that can fail, and they're also active, which means they need power, which means in some situations you may not be able to use them. However, most consoles or interfaces have 48 volt phantom power these days. Okay, so let's chat about the differences. Now, because condenser microphones are relying on a variance between the 2 plates, as opposed to the dynamic microphone, which is actually moving the diaphragm and a metal coil, condenser microphones tend to be a little bit better at picking up subtleties, especially with regards to high frequency things. So a condenser microphone is more sensitive than a dynamic mic. So it's better, right? Not entirely. And it has a lot to do with the dynamic's ruggedness and convenience more than anything. Now, if we're in a studio environment, we're recording vocals, we might want to use a large diaphragm condenser like this mic here. And the reason being is we want that really high fidelity, really high quality recording with all that information possible, so we have complete control when we're mixing. But you have to consider this is in a controlled studio environment. The temperature is controlled, it's not going to rain, the microphone sleeps in a wooden box every night. We take good care of that equipment. Whereas live, we need something that can drop and it can stand the rain and spit and sweat from a singer every night. A little added bonus is that dynamic microphones tend to be really good at rejecting off-axis noise. So things like the crowd, or if the singer has a monitor wedge pointing at their face, the microphone is less likely to pick up that monitor, causing feedback and stuff like that. So for that reason too, they make a really good option for live. There is also a sonic characteristic that we like to dynamic microphones. And now one of the most popular microphones in the world is the Shure SM57. It's ubiquitous with audio recording. It's in every live show you've ever seen. It's probably been the mic on the snare drum, the guitar amps. It's literally used everywhere. And this mic is only like $100. So all these multi-million-dollar touring rigs are using this $100 microphone, and it's the go-to for a lot of pro sound guys. Why is this microphone so widely used, especially on something like a snare drum? Well, it actually physically doesn't work well. I'll explain. Let's take the example of using a snare drum. As the drummer hits the drum, the sound leaves, it hits the diaphragm, and in that dynamic microphone, it's going to be moving the diaphragm and the moving coil. Now, because that system is so heavy, it actually takes a long time to start oscillating. And so in that time where it's starting to ramp up, a lot of the sound has actually already passed. So what happens is that this really sharp attack from the snare drum gets rounded off, meaning we can actually bring up some of the resonance or the sustain of the instrument. So it actually leads to sound like a really nice, pleasant snare drum, and we actually really like that distortion that's happening. Even though it's technically wrong, it means it's actually easier to get a good snare drum and have it sit behind the vocals much easier because it's not as bright or as sharp or shrill. All right, let's wrap this up. Generally speaking, most talent in voiceover are using a large diaphragm condenser microphone, like this one right here. That's because they're going to get a bit more intelligibility and a bit more detail in the top end, which can be desirable for some projects, but it gives the post mixer or the person who's going to be receiving the files more control over the details. You can pick up a really good condenser microphone for around $200 US. If you're getting started, I would recommend the Rode NT1A, the Audio-Technica 2020, or the AKG P420. Those are some great options to start with. And if you need to pair it with an interface, I'd recommend the Scarlett Solo by Focusrite, or the PreSonus AudioBox 96, or the Behringer UM2. And I will link all of these things down below so you have access to those there. All this said, the best mic for the job is the one that you have access to right now. So make do with what you currently have and upgrade as you go. One last thing, let me be perfectly clear. Dynamic microphones and condenser microphones both can sound loud and full and punchy, and both can do the job really well. All right, guys, well, that's it for video number 1 of Creative 101. Once again, if you guys have an idea for a topic you want to see covered in this series, comment down below using hashtag Creative101 for your chance to win a 3-month membership here at voices.com. Also, feel free to like and subscribe for more tips on how to level up your game. As always, happy auditioning. We'll see you in the next one.